I've always been into photography. I had my first darkroom when I was 10 years old. And when my kids were born, I needed to kind of rekindle that hobby because I wanted pictures as my kids were growing up. So I bought my $650 Mavica, started taking pictures digitally, and just discovered that the tools that were available for ordinary people to use to manage the photos and email them, save them, make sure you could find them later were really, really bad. So I began building a company around the idea of creating software that made digital photography easier to use. I started Picasa, digital photography software, to make managing your photos, editing them, emailing them, and making sure that you could find them later on. Ended up selling that company to Google, and worked for Google for several years as a director of product management there, working on various products, including, of course, the photography product that later, over the years, has grown into Google Photos. Both. It's definitely a fad of the moment, and when people think of blockchain, many immediately think of cryptocurrency, but cryptocurrency is an application that's built on top of blockchain. It's enabled by the blockchain. Blockchain, of course, is based on this notion of a distributed, immutable ledger with no central authority controlling its content. But there's more to it than that. There's this thing called the DAO, or the Distributed Autonomous Organization, which actually allows you to implement contracts between consenting parties on the blockchain, meaning that you can enter into a contract that will be automatically fulfilled when the conditions on both sides are met without an intermediary. The application that I became excited about, built on blockchain, is one that dovetails with my interest in photography, and it's around the stock photography business. Every website, every advertisement, every banner ad, photography is largely licensed from stock photo libraries rather than commissioning a photographer to produce custom work. And over the years, the past 15, 20 years where that business has evolved, it's created a multi-billion-dollar market dominated by a couple of players. And the players are people like Getty Image and Shutterstock that maintain these large libraries, and they have the relationships with the photographers, and all of the discovery of the photographs and images that a customer might want to use is on the marketplace's website. So someone looking for a particular photo will go to that website, search the images, find what they're using for, and then enter into a license to use it in some way. In that relationship, which has kind of the content producers at one end, the photographers doing the creative work, you have the marketplace in the middle, and then ultimately you have the consumers, the people that are looking for the photographs to use them for these various applications. And it's emerged that sort of the marketplaces have all the power, and they are extracting up to 85% of the royalty payments that are being paid by the ultimate consumers of these images, leaving the photographers with just a very, very, very small chunk. The stock photo space, I believe, is ripe for disintermediation, for reducing the role of these marketplaces and allowing the customer for the image to come together with the artist in a direct contractual relationship that bypasses the middleman who's extracting these exorbitant fees. And you can see how this would kind of now come full circle into the notion of the contract that's implemented on the blockchain, where after the identification of the image, a contract is entered into under terms that are agreed to between the photographer and the end user, the customer. And that contract, once done, is done. So anytime that photo is used under the conditions of the license, the photographer is going to get paid. The contract is consummated directly between the two parties, and it exists for eternity. So there's no renegotiation, as there has been on the part of the marketplaces, saying, oh, you know what, we were paying you 50% last year, but this year I think it's going to be 20%. Any individual photographer lacks the power to be heard in this very crowded marketplace. You need a centralized market for the discovery, but you don't need that middleman in the economic flow taking this exorbitant margin. I believe that the majority of the revenue ought to go back to the content creators. Wemark is building a marketplace which will provide a superior search experience to anything else that's out there using the latest image recognition and object identification technologies. They're stepping back from the administration of the contractual relationship, the enforcement of that They have less overhead in terms of providing purely the discovery service as opposed to the full contractual and order fulfillment service, etc. So the photographers right now, as I said, are making, in some cases, only 15% of the ultimate price for the licensing of their creative work to the ultimate customer. We can provide an immutable contract where they are guaranteed 85% of that revenue. They can set their price to the market, knowing that they'll get 85% of that, and they're willing to set their price far lower than they set it for the Getty Images and the Shutterstocks because they're making more anyway. Absolutely. There absolutely is. You can slim down the marketplace to provide just those unique services that the customer wants to discover and get rid of a lot of the other fat that's involved in that business model. Where Wemark has been focused is on making sure that when the service is launched, that we have great content there. So we're putting an enormous amount of effort into signing up these photographers and other image providers so that we make sure that we'll have a better mousetrap. Photographers are reacting extremely positively. They are up in arms about the economic pressure that these agencies' marketplaces are putting on them. They can't make a living doing this because they're being squeezed out of the market by the middlemen. I've been encouraged by the operating discipline and the commitment that the team has to really solving this problem, as opposed to just riding the cryptocurrency hype wave that's out there now. The company will expand into other content areas after some proven success in the stock photo business. Stock photography in and of itself is a $4 billion market. If you aggregate all the other content types, it's obviously in the tens of billions. Based on what we're seeing from photographers in terms of their willingness to provide their content to Wemark, that's a very hopeful sign that things will move quickly. Because if comparable content or superior content is made available on this platform at lower prices than it's available other places, then the company's challenge is just to make itself known to the market, because you're basically getting the same product at a better price, and the photographer is happier to be there. And those are the right ingredients, I think, for growing the company quickly.